Hey everybody, this is Perch. Several months ago now, we talked about this case of Frank Gogol and Marissa White. And this was back in August, I believe, it was August. Anyway, where did this all come from? Well, Melissa basically tweeted about a story and talking about the dangers of barcon. Barcon being a slang name for people going out to drink after an event. BarCon is one of those things where anyone who's ever worked in any kind of industry where you have networking drinks will tell you that there is some pressure to go out drinking after the show or after the conference. That it's like, hey, it's time for bonding. And there's enough of an idea in people's head that if you don't go out for bonding, then you're going to be missing out on bonding time. And if you're missing out on bonding time, you're going to be overlooked for various job opportunities, promotions, etc. So you go, even if you don't particularly like it, and you put up with usually a lot of drunken, stupid behavior. Now, the funny thing is, there's been a lot of studies on this and have shown that actually promotions and special opportunities and other things that quote unquote come from BarCon is kind of overstated. Certainly, it can have an intangible benefit to help bond people, but there's actually less evidence to suggest it's really important or not. I think a lot of people have kind of woken up to this idea that if they don't do well in those kinds of social situations, they don't go. And it doesn't have as big of a negative impact as people think. There's this kind of old tribal mentality of like, oh, that's what everybody says, but then they don't get that special book. Yeah, except there's less evidence to suggest that's actually true. Networking can happen a lot of different ways. It's not required to go to BarCon. It's certainly not required that you let some writer put his hand up your dress. Anyway. That's just saying. So that's not related to this situation. Making a joke about a previous situation. There you go. So Melissa basically calls out Frank Gogol. And what's interesting about this, and we said at the time, was that if you're doing I've been afraid to tell this story for Backlash for years, but here we go. And then you tag somebody, and she did. She tags in Frank Gogol and then adds his handle at Twitter. And the statement is, Frank called me a racial slur at the 2018 New York City Comic-Con, BarCon. The experience was among many of the negative experiences at BarCons. At the time I was told he was a big deal in comics. And then this thread went on. And it went on for a while, and it talked about kind of this, a joke about if black people are attractive or not, and, etc. And and then a lot of stuff. A lot of people did videos about this story at the time. It went around, and I did a video on it that seemed to irritate both people who said I wasn't supporting her and people who said I wasn't supporting him. My point at the time was like, hey, you play stupid games, you get stupid prizes. If you're going to BarCon with a bunch of comic professionals, you need to have like your armor up and be careful about it. And even recent cons, there's still little messages, little text messages I get from people like, oh, somebody grabbed my ass like 2 weeks ago. So just don't grab people's ass. And if you're going to one of those things, be careful that you're not putting yourself in a position so somebody can claim you grabbed their ass, even if you didn't. Just like it's a minefield, I guess is all I'm saying. So anyway, so Melissa writes this, and then it gets retweeted and amplified by Gail Simone and Jeff Marriott and Kala Hussett, Joey Esposito, and Minnie came in here and basically immediately said that Frank Gogol was wrong. Frank Gogol, who had a book, Power Rangers book, not a huge book, one of the weirder aspects of the original claim, I'm just in fairness, is at the time I was told he was a big deal in comics by our mutual friend. I just throw out there, I don't know who got that idea where, but anyway, fine. So Gogol was basically going to work on this Power Rangers book. It gets taken away from him. It gets basically canceled. Boom Studios dropped him. And then he started working on, he has a book called Undone, which is published by SourcePoint Press. And at this year's New York City Comic-Con just a couple weeks ago, Gogol was basically asked to leave a comic creator social event. And basically invited to go away. And the social event, for what it's worth, seemed to have a lot of, I want to say, ugly aspects to it. There were a number of stories that came out about this. I think these are exactly the kinds of events you do not want to go to, for what it's worth. I think it's a bad idea. Anyway, then at the party, his publisher, in a sign of solidarity, Twin Source Point Press, left with him, left the Twins pub, and basically walked out as well. And it created a bit of a fuss, but it also created a bunch of kind of high fives amongst a number of kind of indie writers who were congratulating themselves publicly and in forums that they got him to leave, that they basically drove him out. And a lot of kind of, you go, get out of here, we got rid of, this is how we clean our house kind of stuff. So the latest update on all this is that Frank has now posted a statement and has basically gone public with the fact that he is suing Marissa White for defamation. And, you know, he goes through kind of the history of where things are at. Now, for what it's worth, he says his lawyer told him to do this. That's a little bit surprising. I mean, generally speaking, lawyers want you to keep your mouth shut until everything is said and done, because anything you introduce becomes evidence. It becomes another paper to basically look at. Now, I know some lawyers have made the comment of, it's okay to go ahead and put some of that stuff out because, what's it going to hurt? And in some cases, they're a little bit shady. They know that the more paper a person puts out equals the more billings that they're going to have to do to look at, defend, and comment on those papers. So, I've definitely heard that as a strategy. So I guess I'm a bit surprised he tweeted out what was a pretty decently sized sketch of what's going on with the court case and why he's suing for defamation and where he's suing. And it basically, the way he frames it up is that Marissa White was initially going to consider a settlement, basically acknowledging a settlement, but is now filing a demurrer, which is a legal defense in which the defendant does not dispute the truth of the complaint here being that falsehoods were said, but rather argues that the claim lacks sufficient grounds for legal action, meaning it was an off-the-cuff remark. There will be a lot of commentary, I suspect, on all this when all is said and done. But, the case will continue. It's interesting to see, once again, a lot of indie people are jumping on this, a lot of writers who seem outraged that, he's suing, and everybody's standing for Melissa. It includes, people like Kevin Cuff, who's, it includes a bunch of different people who were some of the same people who were glad to see him driven out during the, a lot of Ringo Award people for some reason. The kind of goofy part about this is, and then a lot of people saying I will never work with Source Point Press, and I will never do it. So a lot of stuff going around and around and around on that. The challenge with all this, and I think the lesson people aren't learning, and is that it is there's the lesson here is keep your mouth shut. For both Gogol, he's in the middle of a lawsuit. For Marissa White, who whether the story is true or not true, I don't know, coming out with it the way that she came out with it, through Twitter and tweets, probably not a really good idea. But another one is the amount of people, particularly the small indie people, who were very nasty, calling Gogol a grease stain, he's an embarrassment, what a asshole, you're full of shit, you're trash ass. Just some really aggressive stuff from people who have 2,000 followers or less and pretty much nothing, so many of them nothing significant to their name. The biggest person probably who's weighing in on this is Jamal Engel, who's probably the largest. I mean, even he's sitting here with 14,000 followers, which is nothing to laugh at, but it's just there's a big lesson here. Why is anybody weighing in on this? This is just a dumb idea to weigh in on this on any level, period. Justin Richards, here he is, finger guns from Vault, weighing in, saying the level of rage this makes me feel cannot be contained or fully described. Fuck Frank Gogol. This is the weird thing about comics right now, is it still feels like a bunch of people who haven't figured out how to take this business seriously, who are still looking at all this and thinking it's some kind of weird pretend game, and that nothing really serious happens. And we've now seen both, assault in some cases. We've seen certainly with all the Me Too stuff that came out, with now lawsuits, with everything that's going into all this. It's not a joke. Any of this, making the accusation, if it's not entirely truthful, and I'm not even weighing in, maybe Melissa is truthful, maybe not. But with all the stuff that went on with Warren Ellis, Cameron Stewart, and everything else over the last couple of years, you have to shake your head at the people who are still going on Twitter and posting things they absolutely should not do, that's detrimental to their job, to their career, to their network. How many people swore off BarCon and then were right back in the bars 2 weeks ago? A lot of them. This idea of the people who kind of asked Gogol to leave during this pub event, most of them were loudly decrying how terrible BarCon was 6 months ago. Less than that, 4 months ago. So the first Comic-Con comes back and everybody rushes to a party and then proceeds to kind of encourage somebody to get out who's in the middle of a lawsuit, and then tweet about it, about how happy they are that they got rid of this guy. And then the guy who's in the middle of a lawsuit decides he wants to tweet out updates about his lawsuit. What's wrong with everyone? Seriously, what's wrong with all of you? This is stupid. Absolutely stupid. I do not understand who in their right minds thinks any of this is a good idea. Any of it. I'm seeing some people in here with some Kickstarters who are trying to get this up and going, and they've got less money right now in their Kickstarters than our project with Larry here, which, by the way, it's still a couple weeks left. Gemini Jump, go back it. Why are you doing all this? The saddest part about the entire comics industry is how it doesn't learn. It does not learn the most obvious, the most basic of lessons, the ones that everybody else can see a mile away. You don't have to like something in order to learn from it. And in this case, you can just go down the list and it feels like a giant circle. We're right back to where we began. Okay, some people did some dumb things at BarCon. We complain about it. We make a bunch of angry statements on Twitter about it. We get a whole fuss. It goes to a lawsuit. Comic-Cons open up again. Everyone goes back to the bar. We again have another fight. We go back to Twitter. Like, at some point, and I know people on this particular topic have picked sides. I'm behind Melissa. I'm behind Frank. I'm on team fuck all of you. I mean, come on. At this point, I have very little sympathy for anyone involved because y'all keep making the same dumb mistakes over and over and over and over. And you know what hasn't been mentioned in the last 13 odd, well, I guess it was briefly. Comics. You know what's not a part of any of this? Comics. Because everybody's too busy jerking off to Twitter and making statements and saying things or not saying things in bars and then going back to the bars and putting themselves in that situation again. Like, most of the people here have almost no career to speak of. I don't know. Maybe there's a little reason why. If you're in comics, for the love of God, use your head. Protect what you've got. Understand that what you have is extremely fleeting. That a couple dumb mistakes could cost you a lot. And you're also playing this game with a bunch of very immature people who will, fuck everything up for you, either through incompetence or malice, really easily. Don't put yourself in this situation. You are nuts at this point if you are wading into all this. I don't know. It's what do you even say about all this? I'd say it's like watching a train wreck, but a train wreck at least is kind of entertaining. There's bangs and explosions and flashes. This is just sad. I don't know where all this goes. I think some people spend a lot of money. You really hope for an outcome in all this where, it turns out that Gogol did do these things and it's proven, and that he's shamed, and everybody learns a lesson of like, don't be an asshole during a party. Or turns out Melissa invented a lot of this stuff and she gets sued and loses some money because she made some stuff up and had to admit it. But we're not going to get those outcomes. We're going to get this quiet, behind closed doors kind of outcome. Melissa's friends are going to continue to support her regardless. Frank's friends will continue to support him. He's not going to get a main book. She's not going to get a main book. Nobody wins. Yay! On a brighter topic, I read Magic Order 2, number 1. It's a great comic. Love that comic. I love the world. The threat feels like there's some real dark shit coming. Great book. Highly recommended. Thanks for listening.